I want to warn the people watching this, particularly my like regular people that watch my videos, that this is not going to be a haha funny video. And I know that might be disappointing for some of y'all, but I watched this movie with the intent to make fun of it. I'm like, oh, Shane Dawson made a dumb movie. Like that might be easy to make fun of. But very quickly, I just got really upset about it. And I went in a different direction for this video. And sometimes I just need to talk about shit that pisses me off. But I'm not talking about Shane Dawson today. I'm talking about the overall picture that Shane Dawson represents in this era of the content that he made. It's the idea that enough people found this type of content funny, and enough people today are slowly normalizing this type of humor. The thing that prompted me to even remember that Shane Dawson made a movie was after watching the Kevin Hart roast. Well, I didn't watch the full thing. I watched clips online. And after seeing some of the things that people were joking about, I was like, wow, like this is the direction that we're moving into again. If there are things that you're just like, you know what, life sucks right now, I don't want to think about difficult things, please skip this video. Before anyone wants to be nostalgic for the days of Shane Dawson pretending to be a belligerent black woman and say that what I'm about to discuss is just offensive jokes or dark comedy, I want to make something abundantly clear to everybody, okay? Like, these are not jokes. These are not jokes. A joke has a punchline. And people who can't make a punchline say whatever gives the loudest reaction. And that's the biggest misconception of shock comedy, is that you're supposed to just say or do the most offensive thing that comes to mind. You can see this very clearly when you watch Tony Hinchcliffe and the majority of people who give a set on Kill Tony. This earlier era of Shane embodies all of that, but he was on the internet and got a lot of attention. As a result, he would not only make extremely offensive skits about black people, but he also joked about rape or making bizarre jokes about his cat. The things that he's said and done on camera is so terrible. But this is not going to be a video specifically about Shane Dawson. Like, I'm only explaining these things to provide some context about this movie, because the things that he's done, that's been discussed a million times. He's publicly apologized for it. And whether that apology is accepted by the public or not, I think it's important to look at the bigger picture of why and how I think something like an entire movie of this dark comedy was made in the first place, because it transcends the acts of one person and really speaks to how easily the masses can cling to content that's so disgusting. Regardless of what terrible things that he did or said to make his audience laugh, he simultaneously threw other darts at the wall of a million other things that you shouldn't find funny, because he knew his audience would also find that funny, and they did. He never only milked one category of bad. It seemed to be, okay, what new bad thing will my audience enjoy this week? So the thesis of today's video is that if Shane requires court-mandated growth, then to some degree, so does his audience. When I talk about the people who watched his content and maybe don't like his content now, or maybe they're nostalgic for this content, I'm not doing that to take away from all that he's done. I just think that pointing out low-hanging fruit of things that he clearly did for people who have consistently found this content funny and judging it completely at face value draws attention away from the core issue at stake, and that this is what his extremely large audience wanted to see at the time. I think that's concerning. Why did so many people find jokes about funny? Why did so many teenagers find funny? Why do people today find funny? Open up a comment section on a Carnival cruise ship video on TikTok and people pass off textbook racism as jokes. It is so normalized now. So I think it's interesting that all the people who said, oh yeah, I used to think Shane's videos were funny, but I don't anymore, don't usually face themselves with the question of, why did I find this funny? Because I worry that we're slowly moving into a reality where people will start to universally find this content funny again. That doesn't automatically make someone who used to find this content entertaining a bad person today, especially given the context of probably being younger and not having your frontal lobe develop. I'm not here to shame anyone, because I don't think it's a very productive thing to do in the long run. And I think you can only control the person you are today. But the point I want to make is, if you ever found this content funny or anything related to this content that comes to mind, I think you should sit and ask, why then and not now? How have I grown as a person? How can I grow as a person? Instead of waiting for other people to tell you when and how to do that. But generally, I do think it's easier for people to pin this behavior entirely on the problematic entertainer that they themselves used to unironically enjoy, but fail to look in the mirror and go, okay, so what's changed for me? And I don't think you're ever going to grow as a person if you don't allow yourself to self-reflect, even if the comment section of a Think Piece TikTok video feels like they're on your side, when you might not even know what side you're on. And if you're not careful, you might find yourself on the wrong side because you're letting other people drive the bus for your morality. I was going to make a video on how poorly made this movie was and make fun of the plot like I normally do. If you're like a regular on my channel, like you know what I do. But I'm actually kind of pissed off more than anything that so many people were involved in greenlighting this, that we have a reality show documenting the entire process, which I have no interest in watching right now. But Shane's movie that he directed called Not Cool was made by an entire team of people on a reality show called The Chair. The Chair was a reality show where two contestants directed a movie from the same script. So while Shane didn't write the screenplay, after watching the other contestants' movie trailer, it was very clear that there was a lot of rewriting happening to make it more on brand for this deplorable era of Shane. And I didn't watch the show. It seems like the screenplay was pretty basic to allow two different directors to put their own twist on it. You know, coming of age movie about a person coming home during holiday break and falling in love. What I'm sure the screenplay didn't have was a black woman dancing on a white guy being referred to as dark meat, and a homeless black man with yellow teeth eating literal shit out of a cup only to later rub his balls on a window. When I see something like that and I can't find the joke, I just can't find it anywhere. The joke is that it's supposed to be seen as completely absurd, except the absurd part is that they're black, or they're fat, or they're this, or they're that, and that's what's supposed to be absurd. And that's why it's not a joke. Like the girl who posts an obviously fake photo of herself online wouldn't be as funny if she was skinny and conventionally attractive. If you don't know already, Shane also stars in this movie and is presented as the most perfect and attractive person ever. A lot of the ways that he portrays himself read as, hey guys, I'm straight. I promise you, I'm straight. His romantic love interest is a girl he bullied in high school, and after some lessons he learns along the way, they end up together. His character's name is Scott, but I'm referring to him as Shane. I'll get to the main girl character in a minute. Her name's Tori, but I want to discuss more about Shane and the interesting choices he made for his character. Have y'all ever seen the movie Just Friends with Ryan Reynolds and Anna Faris? Shane almost made himself the highly desirable post-high school Ryan Reynolds character. Like he's a big shot who is perfect, and his character is introduced alongside what I see as the crazy Anna Faris character. You know, like the clingy nymphomaniac situationship who acts insane. But she's also used as an accessory to position Shane as extremely attractive, because the first thing that she does is make out with him and then blow him off in the bathroom, which is a scene that I literally couldn't sit through. I skipped through the whole thing. This lunatic breaks up with Shane, you know, the normal one. So our takeaway is that he's highly desirable and newly single. So back to Tori. So Tori is Shane's love interest, and the way she was portrayed in comparison to Shane felt kind of humiliating. On more than one occasion, she is vomited on. And her introductory monologue, she paints a picture of what kind of person she was in high school, and the things that she talks about are so out of pocket and weird. Like the fact that she wet her bed until her teenage years and broke her hymen with a baby carrot. Right? Like she always just seems to have these really bizarre, embarrassing stories to tell about herself. But we're supposed to overlook all that because now she's in college and she's cool. I think the baby carrot detail is so unbelievably alarming because it paints a specific picture, and it's unfortunately only a light example of what this movie has to offer. Shane, on the other hand, was cool in high school, but now he's supposedly a nerd and a loser, except the things that are apparently embarrassing for Shane don't come anywhere close to the things that make Tori's life embarrassing. One character that I think had some potential was the version of himself dressed as a popular girl in high school, where she says goodbye to one of her friends and calls her really terrible things and claims that she's kidding. Aside from the weird comment about banging the lunch lady, which...
And I was like, that's the last time I'm ever having sex with the cafeteria lady again.
Made no sense. I think the reason something like this character could work is because it's obvious what the joke is in the dialogue.
Bye, gross, stupid fucking bitch! Kidding, not really.
You know, like it's like that thing girls and gays do when they pretend to be this Regina George figure and insult someone playfully, except they're actually being mean. Some other characters include YouTuber Drew Monson, who plays this really creepy, sex-crazed nice guy who has a side romantic plot with this girl Janie, who is supposed to be super popular in high school. The Joel character is in college and visits his old high school during break to lie about banging dozens of women in college. Despite never being with anyone, he's obsessively interested in Janie, who's still in high school, but I assume they're maybe a year apart, hopefully, knock on wood. She's clearly not interested, and he continues to shoot his shot in a very concerning and annoying way throughout the movie, which made me uncomfortable. Tori occasionally seeks wisdom from her gay friend about navigating her hometown while she's on break, and he only exists to be like, okay, yeah, girlfriend. Like, that's literally the only thing that he's there for. And Tori's parents, who are by no coincidence overweight, also have this bit where they're working out and mom shits herself. So I imagine imagine every decision of this terrible movie to be, hey, wouldn't it be funny if we had a random blank person to do this? The majority of details in this movie seem to be just that. The real plot of this movie starts at another party that Tori goes to with her friend Joel, because Joel convinces Janie to let him help her study after this really awkward scene of him touching her boobs and Tori somehow gets vomited on again. And when she leaves the party, she almost runs Shane over with a car, and that's how they connect. Now you have to remember, Shane was the perfect popular one in high school, okay? So like every girl wanted a piece of him. And Tori is immediately like, yeah, I hate you for what you put me through in high school, but I'd still bang you. And then they get freaky in the car. Like,
are you into me?
God, I'm not into you. I mean, would I have sex with you? Yeah, probably, but that does not mean that I'm into you.
you know, it's like she just can't control herself around Shane Dawson. She's also regularly referred to as her high school nickname, Tori the Hoary, which is humiliating.
Tori the Hoary?
And we're back.
Tori also has a blind sister who was clearly not blind and played by another popular YouTuber from the time, Lisa Schwartz. Also could have done without the shot of Shane taking a shit in the bathroom. The series of events that are unfolding at the moment in this movie are happening on Thanksgiving, and Shane is looking through photos of Tori, which inspire him to show up at her house that night. And there's this back and forth thing with her because she sees him for what he was in high school, but now he's a different person, and she's constantly restraining herself from admitting that she wants to profess her undying love to Shane. There's this dancing bit that they do, which I hate because they somehow make a black joke that isn't really a joke to begin with again.
This is how I always pictured black people playing this game.
Somehow or another, they run into each other again at the mall, and Tori discovers that Shane is now kind of a loser, or like isn't cool anymore, and he likes lame things. Except this wasn't really selling it for me, because at most he's really sensitive, likes photography, and there was some weird comment he made later in the movie about jacking off on Friday nights at some point. So even when he was supposed to be the loser character, he still opted to portray himself in like a pretty average way compared to the girl character Tori, who has said some really embarrassing things and had like vomit on her twice. The part in between the introduction of the movie and the conflict that happens later is just a bunch of filler, and seems to have just been a way to throw in more of Shane's infamous dark comedy. So it makes doing any kind of regular breakdown of this movie pointless. One example is an interaction where Shane and Tori let a black checkout lady know that Tori is pregnant with a baby after she was and she has a watermelon under her shirt and pretends to fall, crushing the watermelon. At $800,000, they have the data to back up that Shane's audience would have found all of this funny, right? And I don't mean to bring this particular example up to like upset any of my audience, because there's more like it, but I needed to pick an example that was clear enough to prove my point. And I'm not going to provide more examples of this than I need to, because there's plenty of actual movie breakdowns for this movie that are from really great creators, and they probably point out every offensive joke, but I personally don't want to do that. It's upsetting to me. But y'all get the point. Like, from my viewpoint, I feel like the original ideas were probably worse. I would imagine there was some form of like pulling back from the other people involved in this production, because I would imagine this version of Shane wanted to like push the envelope even more, you know what I mean? But obviously that's not something I can prove, and I didn't watch the documentary. So that's just a speculation. Diverting away from Shane and Tori for a minute, during this study date that they're supposed to have, he's overly horned up and like asks her weird questions about whether she'd sleep with him if they were on a deserted island. And he plans this whole night around things he found out about her while stalking her online, which she ends up finding appreciation for, but only as a friend. And he even kisses her at one point, which freaks her out, and they don't end up together by the end of the movie, but like the lesson that he's supposed to learn is that he needs to restrain himself from throwing himself onto his platonic female friend in a sexual way. I don't know, like if I was friends with a dude and they were forcing themselves to not salivate over everything that I do and make really weird comments about being on a deserted island, I probably wouldn't want to be friends with them. But I can't take this movie seriously enough to truly critique the plot. The discourse between Shane and Tori is laughably pointless, because closer in the relationship, Shane, who at this point in the movie admitted to failing his classes or something, enjoys Tori's company so much that he wants to quit school, and Tori has a problem with this because he's not applying himself as much as he should. And their conflict manifests after he makes a comment about how easy she was to sleep with. So there's a short period of time where they're in some sort of like break period where Tori is told by her fake blind sister that she just needs to accept Shane for being the mediocre loser he is. And she's like, okay, cool, I need to be more understanding, and finds him at a party getting by Timu Aniferis. So yeah, this becomes a giant stupid misunderstanding that is resolved after Shane shows up to her house and shaves his head. Oh, there was this thing about a list of things that Tori thought it would be fun to do, and one of those things was like Shane shaving his head, and he refused to do it because his hair was so perfect. This is a better look for him, I'll give him that. How noble of Shane to break so many barriers. Shaving his real hair for a movie scene. Like, it's literally gonna grow back in 6 months. Do a backflip instead. So they make up at the end and there's a party again. Tori has this closing monologue talking about how she realized she doesn't need to post everything in her life, which didn't seem to really align with most of this story. I know I skipped over a lot of this because there isn't much quality content within this movie to break down anything. And I only wanted to show enough to get my point across for this video. And that is that this movie is a truly bad movie that relied completely on Shane's, dark comedy, because that's all this movie needed for it to receive the same attention that Shane's YouTube videos got. This cheap and hollow form of comedic entertainment might feel really insane to some of you. Like, man, you cannot make any of this today, except we're kind of getting into a world where, yes, actually, I think people might be incentivized to make this kind of content again. I think this movie is a perfect vessel to explain how we as a society can normalize very horrible, horrible things and pass them off as like comedy or jokes. And it's a reflection of what kind of content made Shane Dawson popular. This video isn't about Shane Dawson. Like, it's, yes, we're talking about Shane Dawson, and it's important to understand the context of this movie, where it came from, but I don't think enough people talk about the ones who enjoyed this content, the ones that wanted more of this, who were nostalgic for this type of content. And if your first instinct while watching this is to challenge me on what comedy is and how you can joke about anything, I want to say, sure, yeah, you can joke about anything, but not everything is a joke.